Crushing the meta!
A big welcome to our channel. We are Team Crushing the Meta, and you can call me D-Boy. I'm here for you guys with a combo video on Rising Nova. So if you haven't seen the deck profile yet, I recommend you going and seeing that, because it would be easier for you guys to understand the combos if you know what the cards does. The only two cards that I didn't explain in my deck profile are Frog Raider and Eliza, which I felt like I have to explain those two cards in the combo video because these two cards are very important, but I could explain them way clearly in the combo video than in the deck profile. So why are these cards very important is because the grade 2 lineup is the lineup that makes the combo with like the Hive Maker from your grade 3s, and the grade 1 lineup are the backbone to your combos. So the Frog Raider has the ability to restand whatever a charge unit with a charge ability is called in front of him, and Eliza has the skill when she boosts a charging unit, so it doesn't really have to have the charge ability, just a charging unit. So you could also do that with a Misery if you charge it with, let's say, Supernova, but you could do that if you want to, but normally you would do that with a different cards, with a different stride, which I will also show you in a minute. But she has the ability when she boosted a charging unit, you counterblast one, you put her in the bottom of your deck, you bind the charging unit and you call it again. So normally the charging unit will go into the bottom of the deck, but with her skill you call the unit back which was charging and she goes to the bottom of the deck. If she is charging herself, you give that unit an extra 2k. If she was not, then the unit doesn't get an extra 2k, which normally is very good, especially with your Tigers, because your Tigers will be able to attack for 11 by themselves, which is great because normally they will just be 9. So let's just go into the first combo. So your first stride combo, your field would normally have like one column or something that you wanted to pressure your opponent with. So let's say you have a lethal forward on the field to just pressure your opponent, and you have already used your Mega Trainer, so you have like 3 damage with 2 face-up damage and 1 that you have used with your Mega Trainer. The cards that you need in your hand for your combos are in Eliza, a Frog Raider, and sometimes a Lyre Lips. The Lyre Lips is just an extra, you don't really need her, but it's alright to have her, it's very good because she gives you 1 more attack. So your field would look like this. You want to call the Eliza behind your lethal forward, and you want to call the Frog Raider on the other side of Eliza. And then if you have a Lyre Lips, would be great. If you don't, it's alright. You go into your battle phase and you attack the first with your Lyre Lips boosted by the Frog Raider. So this is 11k. Could hit the Vanguard, but normally you will attack the rear guard because you don't want them to get the early damage like a draw trigger or any trigger to give the Vanguard an extra 5k. Then you attack with your Supernova, put the Lyre Lips in your soul, you draw a card, then activate the skill of Rising Nova to call something from your deck, which normally is an Impulse or another lethal forward. I recommend going into an Impulse because this is the Impulse lethal combo. Restand the Frog Raider and give the Impulse an extra 5k. From there you activate Supernova skill to unflip a copy of himself to give the other lethal forward the charge ability, which he get an extra 2k. So he'll be charged and he will also be charged, and I can't find the extra 2k. So this column will hit for 21 and this column will hit for 18. Let's say you drive check revealed a trigger, which is a draw trigger. That's pretty nice. You give the power to the Frog Raider because the Frog Raider will restand twice, so you have more benefit of your trigger. So let's say you give the power to the Frog Raider. If you get one more trigger, so let's say you get a critical, because normally your opponent will let this attack go through. He also got an extra 5k from the Lyre Lips, and you also want to strike first. This is the turn that you create the advantage. This is your best strike turn, which is your first turn strike. By creating the advantage is your opponent would let this guy attack, would let this attack go through normally. The reason for that is they don't expect you playing too much critical triggers in Rising Nova, but you do. You play more than 6, so you play 7 or 8. It depends on how many draw triggers that you want to play. So let's say you have 2 triggers, which is a Silent Joker and a Pauline, and you give the first power to the Frog Raider, and the second power you want to give it to the Lethal Forward. The reason for that is you want to make this column strong as well, because you got a critical, so they have to take 2 damage, and sometimes one of the 2 will be a trigger. So let's say you got 2 triggers, so you put 1 power right there and 1 there, and they get like no triggers, or they get 1 trigger, doesn't matter. They give the power to the Vanguard. Even if they get 2 triggers, this column will still be able to hit them. So you attack with this column, which is 26. This is very important to have, because now your opponent would have to choose between perfect guarding this attack or discarding a heal trigger to guard this attack. They will have to guard this attack because this attack will hit for 26. And if the attack goes through, you will retire something and draw because of Impulse skill. Impulse skill is very straightforward. So normally they guard this attack, they would have to discard like 2 cards or a heal trigger to stop him, which is alright because you want them to guard this attack for the Lethal Forward to be able to do his combo or his dirty work. The Impulse goes to the bottom of the deck, and the Frog Rider still have the power. You attack with the Lethal Forward. Now you create 2 scenarios. The first one is if the Lethal Forward hits, you can call something from your deck to an open area circle, which is normally the Axe Diver because you have a face-up damage. The Axe Diver comes to the field, the Frog Raider restands, and the Axe Diver skill kicks in. Counter Blast 1, Soul Blast 1, and don't forget to put 1 card from your hand into the Soul for your Rising Nova skill. But you normally draw an extra card from Lyre Lips, so you don't have any problem with that. So you activate the Axe Diver skill to bind and call the Lethal Forward. How does this work? Well, Lethal Forward skill is when he hits the Vanguard, you can call something to an open area circle before he goes back to the bottom of the deck. So that's when you call the Axe Diver and then use the Axe Diver skill first before he goes back. So you bind him and you call him again and you give him an extra 2k because he's charged. And if he is charging as well, you don't always have to make him charge, but normally you want to because you want this column to have more power. So you activate his skill to make him charge and bind and call this unit. And if he's charging himself, this unit will get an extra 5k. So he gets another 7k, and because he's charged, you get an extra 2k. And the Axe Diver will get a 5k because of his own skill. The Eliza skill, you can't just leave her on the field. You don't want to use the skill because you already called the Lethal Forward. So now you have this column which is 26 again, and this will be 16 by himself. So you attack with this column again, which is 26. Your opponent would let this attack go through because he does nothing, but that's alright because you want to give them some damage. He goes to the bottom of the deck and you attack with this again. This would be just 10k for your opponent to guard, which is normally the units that they don't want to guard with, like a critical trigger that they want to leave at their hand, or a heal trigger that they just discard, or 2 5ks, like important units that they have to discard. But they will never ever let this attack go through again, because when this attack go through now, you can activate the skill to call another impulse and restand this guy and attack for another 21, or you could attack, you could call a tiger or anything from your deck except himself. He can't call himself, and attack with this column again. And that's very important about the Frog Raider, to have the extra 5k at least, because he makes your column 21, and 21 is just the right number that you want to attack with, because even if your opponent get 2 triggers, the 21 still be able to hit. And you don't want to go too early for your tigers, because you want to leave the tiger aspect to the mid-late game. Let's say they don't let this attack go through. So the second scenario. So normally he has the extra 7k because he's charging and you give him one of the triggers, and he has the 5k. So you attack with this column and they won't let this attack go through. You activate the Eliza skill, so you counterblast 1, she goes to the bottom of your deck, and you bind and call the lethal forward again. He gets an extra 2k from his own skill because he's charging again, and that's when you have a nice column right here. You get attack with it, and now they would have to guard this attack as well. So they guarded the first attack that he did, the attack with the impulse, and this attack. So they have to guard 3 of your attacks to stop all your combos. And if they let any of the 3 attacks go through, then you will create hand advantage. So let's say they guard the 3 attacks. And that's the good thing about the lethal forward and the impulse in this deck, which a lot of people ask me about. Why you play lethal forward in this deck is because of this. Now your opponent would have to guard 3 attacks, and let's say they discarded like 4 or 5 cards to stop these attacks, and that would leave you with a hand advantage, especially if you go first. If you go first and your opponent didn't strike yet, they do not have that ability to discard that much cards to stop all the attacks. So they have to take some of the damage, and they would also have to take your Vanguard. If they guard your Vanguard with a perfect guard, then that would leave them vulnerable for more deadly attacks from the lethal forward Axe Diver combo, or just the lethal forward Eliza combo, which is a very, very, very good combo just to use. This column is very good, especially you do have 1 counterblast. If, as I said, you do use the Eliza skill or the Axe Diver skill. Doesn't matter which one you use. If he hits, you use the Axe Diver. If he doesn't, you use Eliza. So on your next turn, normally you would have at least 1 unit on the field, which is normally the Frog Raider. So let's say you don't play against Kagero, Narukami, or anything that retires. So you still have your Frog Raider on the field, which doesn't matter which side he's on, and you have like no other rare guards on the field, which normally your field would look like this. You have 2 face-up units in your G zone. If you didn't G guard, that is. If you did, then you have 3, and that's when you go into your Dirty Picaro. From here you have the option to go into Dirty Picaro or your Miracle Ace. It depends on... Miracle Ace will not give you advantage, so this, if you go into him, you just want to finish your opponent off. If you want to wait 1 more turn because you don't really have the charging units in your hand, or you don't want to risk it, you want to wait 1 more turn, or you're playing against Gears or Kagero or Mega Colony that could interrupt your plays, you go into the Dirty Picaro, which is good enough. And then it depends on the damage that they have. Let's say they have 3 damage, then you could just go for final turn. If they have less than 3 damage, you will have to wait. They have 3 damage or 4 damage because your first strike turn was perfect, and you did pressure them, and you have the hand advantage. So you go into Dirty Picaro. With Dirty Picaro, let's say you have a Lyre Lips in your hand, you call it, you attack with it. If you don't, it's alright. So you attack with the Lyre Lips goes to the soul, you attack with your Dirty Picaro, counterblast 2, put 1 card from your hand into the soul, and don't forget to draw from the Lyre Lips. And now you don't really have to use his skill, because his skill is enough. I will never use his skill with him, and that's the downside about his skill. I hope the new Rising Nova, which with the charge ability, would have a different kind of skill. But in this combo, you don't really use him anymore. The only good thing about him is that he is a Rising Nova, so this guy will restand. And also, if you do the combo with Miracle Ace, you do need his skill. But the only turn that you don't really need his skill is with your Dirty Picaro. So you activate the Dirty Picaro skill to unflip something. Normally it's a Sea Breeze if you have him in your deck. Don't unflip a G-Guard. I've seen people unflip a G-Guard. No, don't unflip a G-Guard. Please don't. So you unflip a Sea Breeze. If you don't play Sea Breeze, you could also unflip a Rising Nova, or Supernova, or anything that you want to unflip. So you can call up to 3 units from your deck, and you will go into the 3 combo Tiger attack, or the triple Tiger attack, whatever you want to call it, and the Frogreader restand is. And you make all the units charge. The Eliza, you make her charge as well. The reason for that is you will lose her anyway, because you will use her skill to go to the bottom of the deck. So the extra 2k is good, because sometimes they destroy your Frogreader or hate round your Frogreader, which is alright. So your field would look like this. You call up to 3 charging units, or you make them charge, and your opponent will let this guy go through again. And that's when they go wrong. If they have 3 damage and they will let this guy go through, you get the critical trigger and you put it on this guy, which is amazing because you do them 2 damage and you have like 3 Tiger attacks that they have to deal with. So that's the reason why you play critical triggers again. That's the big reason why you play critical triggers. Living Proof, if you haven't seen his videos, very important to go into his channel and watch his videos. He also approached the combo video differently, which is he shows you if you have 1 damage or 2 damage or 3 damage, which is very nice to see the shifting between the combos with the damage that you have face up in your G-Zone. But he agrees with me on having more criticals in your deck, because that would make the Vanguard attack deadly. So because normally your Vanguards in Spike Brothers doesn't do a lot by themselves, they call units, but the attacking unit doesn't do a lot. The only card that does something is the Damper Lily, so the hit effects. That's the only card that does something, but all the others doesn't do anything by themselves. They just call units. So yeah, you attack with him, they will let this attack go through or just perfect guard it, and then they would have to deal with 3 Tiger attacks. So you attack with the first Tiger, and he's charged, so he has the guard break. If you don't know what he does, I recommend you going into the deck profile and watching that. Then he goes to the bottom of the deck because he's charged. You attack with the other Tiger, which is another 16, and then you use Eliza's skill to go to the bottom of the deck and call the Tiger again and restand the Frogreader. You do need the 3 face-up damage to do this combo, but with your G unflip perfect guards, it's possible. And also because you, as me playing, I do let the attacks go through, so I will be at 4 or 5 damage, which is great, because when you are at 5 damage, your opponent can't heal on the 3rd or the 4th damage, so you just have advantage by them not healing, which is also great. So you attack again with the Tiger, so they have to deal with 3 Tiger attacks, and if they don't have a G-Guard or a Perfect Guard, then they will be just, they can't stop the attack, because normally you will have a lot of soul. You have used 2 Lion Lips, and you have used the skill of Rising Nova and the skill of Dirty Picaro, so you have like 6 cards in your soul, which is enough to guard break like most attacks that your opponent, most guardians that your opponent will put in the guardian circle for the Tiger attack. Let's say you have a very good hand and you just want to finish your opponent off with your Miracle Ace. The Miracle Ace combo requires only 2 face-up damage. If you have 3, that would be perfect, but 2 are enough in my opinion. And you could always use the skills of Silent Joker to put more soul and unflip your damage. So don't hesitate to use your Silent Jokers because they will give you one more attack. So let's say you have your Miracle Ace and your hand would look like this. You have a Lethal Forward, you have a Hive Maker, let's say you have a Misery, and a Stride Father. So let's say your hand look like this. You also need a stand trigger. If you have it, that will be perfect because the stand triggers work really good with the Miracle Ace. So you have 2 face-up damage. You flip one, you counterblast one with for his skill, which is an act skill. Activate that first, and then you could call the Misery and you could call the Acrobat Verde if you want to. You could also call the Devil Watch, which you could also make him charge if you call the, let's say, the Axe Diver. But I would just recommend you calling the Acrobat Verde. So your field would look like this. Or if you don't have anything that you want to call right here, you could also leave it right like this. Because you have these 2, which is great. You do need at least 1 to make the combo possible with Miracle Ace. You attack with Miracle Ace first. If you don't have a Liar Lips, if you have the Liar Lips, you will attack with that first as well. You always attack with the Liar Lips first if you have her. And now you attack with the Miracle Ace. You could also do it like this and call the Frog Raider right here, because the Frog Raider that you call from your Rising Nova skill would starting having the first 5k, which is great. But if you don't, it's alright. So you have one more face-up damage, which you use. You counterblast that, and you call something from your deck, which, let's say, another Devil Watch. So you call another Devil Watch, and you give it an extra 5k. He also gets the power from his own skill, which will give him more power. He gets an extra 3k, which give him an extra 8k, which is great. So you attack with this first, and you get this guy and give him an extra 5k. They would normally just guard this attack because they don't know what this guy does, and they would read him and they would get confused as well. And normally I do explain him because otherwise it would be very hard for this turn to just for your opponent to get this turn. So then you attack with this column. You activate the skill of Devil Watch first, so you soul charge and you unflip a damage. Then you are able to use the Misery skill to call something to an open regular circle and give it an extra 5k. The unit that you want to call from your deck could be a Devil Watch if you want to, but it could be anything. I normally would like to go into an Impulse because it pressures your opponent more. All the drive check that you get from your Vanguard, you give it to the Frog Raider. So let's say you got only 1 drive check, so you give him an extra 5k, which will do that as a 1. So that's the first 5k. And the Impulse will get a 5k as well, which is perfect because that would make this column 26 again. So you attack with this, which would be 16, 21. They would have to guard it. Normally they don't because she doesn't have an hit effect or anything. He goes to the bottom of your deck, and you can call something from your hand if you want to with Miracle Ace skill. If you have another stand trigger, you could call that as well right here. If you don't, just leave it in your hand. Remember, it depends on the counterblasts that you have in your hand. So let's say you have the cards that you had in your hand were, let me see, a Lethal Forwards, an Acrobat Verde, and these cards. So let's say you gave up the Acrobat Verde from your hand for your Stride skill. So you have these 3. You drive checked. Let's say a critical trigger which you used for your Misery skill, or the draw trigger that you use for Misery skill, and an Eliza, and let's say another copy of Rising Nova. which is alright. It would be way more fun if you have drive checked. Let's say an axe diver, which will give you the opportunity to attack twice with your misery. So let's say your drive check was like this, or with a draw trigger that you put in the soul, which is alright. And now you attack with this column. This would attack for 26. Something went back to the bottom of the deck, which is the critical trigger, the stand trigger. Give him an extra 5k from his skill. And you don't want to call anything from your hand. You could, but you could also just wait. Normally, if I had like a second Frog Raider or let's say an Acrobat Verdi, I would just call it right here, but you don't really have to. So let's say you have an Acrobat Verdi in your hand, you could just call it right here, which is alright. And then you attack with this column. If he hits, you get one more card. If he don't, he just goes to the bottom of the deck. Activating his skill to give one more unit an extra 5k, which is just the Frog Raider. 2 cards from your soul to activate his GB3 skill and call something from your hand. And he restands, he gets an extra 3k, which will make this column 14, 24, 29, and activate his skill to soul charge something from your deck and unflip a damage. And then he goes to the bottom of the deck, activating his skill to give something an extra 5k, or chain the skill of his GB3 first, 2 cards from your soul, and call the Axe Diver. You remember you have 1 face-up damage because of the stand trigger. Activate his skill to bind and call the Misery. Because he's charged, they still get the extra 5k. So you get a 5k and she gets a 5k. And you give the power to him as well. So he gets an extra 5k, he restands this. And then you attack with this again. He goes to the bottom, gives something an extra 5k. And you don't call with his skill, you don't have to yet. You have 2 cards in your soul. So you attack with your Misery, activate her skill to put something from your hand into your soul. You don't really want to give up your charging units, so normally you will put like a perfect guard or something from your hand. Let's say you don't have anything, so you have to give up one of your charging units, and that's when you will call it could be a stat trigger to get the opportunity to activate Hive Maker, but normally I will just go into an impulse because that will just give you more pressure. And you have 3 units in your soul, so that's enough. Restand is the Frog Raider, and you attack with this column, and that's when this column would definitely hit. Also, the unit that you called here will get an extra 5k from Misery. I forgot about that, but it's alright. Goes to the bottom of the deck, you Soul Blast 2, and you call more. Let's say you call Lethal Forward. So the combo could go on and on and on, depending on the cards that you have in your hand, the combo that you do. So remember, because you have the Misery, when you attack with your Vanguard, you call the Devil Watch right here, and you attack with this column. And when he goes back to the bottom of the deck, you will be able to use his GB3 skill to call something right here, which is a booster. Could also be just a trigger, a draw trigger, or a critical trigger, it doesn't matter, as long as it could boost for your Misery to attack twice. And you also need the Axe Diver in your hand to be able to make the combo possible. So you can call him and bind and call the Misery. So yeah, that's just the Misery crazy combo, but normally you don't really have to do that. You could just finish them off pretty easy by having just these 2 on the field, attack with him and call. But with the Misery on the field, it's really nice because sometimes you have cards in your hand that doesn't have the charge ability, so he could not restand when you call them, and that's when you could just put them into your soul with your Misery. So you have 2 attacks from Misery and 1 from your Rising Nova. So that's just another crazy combo that you could do. So you have seen the Miracle Ace combo, you have seen the Dirty Pickerel combo, and you have seen the Super Rising. From there are different combos that you could do. You could replace the Rising Nova combo with the Dumper Lily combo that I showed you. Dumper Lily combo could be very easy. Normally, when you play against Link Joker, you could go into her or just go into him because you want to use your Dirty Pickerel. And the good thing about Dirty Pickerel is when you play against card or decks like Link Joker that you don't really want to leave units on your field, you could just call the stand triggers and Eliza's and get the counter charge back and be able to leave an empty space behind them. Sorry about that. So let's look at the G zone. Which cards do you have left? Normally, you could go into another Dirty Picker next turn. You don't play any, or I play only one Miracle Ace. So only these four, or these three actually, are the big three, like I like to call them. So how does this work in the Counterblast version, like Proof, like to do with Living Proof? If you have like only one face-up damage, you could use your Rising Nova or Supernova because your stride skill would cost you a Counterblast, so that's right. If you do want to use this combo but you have no face-up damage, then you could also do it with a stand trigger, which you can call the stand trigger behind your Vanguard. You attack with it, you make the stand trigger charge with his skill, and then you activate his skill to get one more unit on the field. But if you do so, you do miss the timing of Supernova giving the extra 10k to all your units, which is another turn that I did not explain, which I will show you later. But so if you have one face-up damage, you would go into him. If you have two face-up damage, you go into him. If you have three face-up damage, you could go into him. That's just the easy way without doing crazy things. You could also use him if you have like 5 face-up damage if you want to. If you have no face-up damage and you have no stand trigger and no Silent Joker in your hand, and you do want to do something but you have no face-up damage, I recommend you going into just the GB2 skill of Rising Nova himself, which is great. The GB2 skill of Rising Nova is alright. It's very nice because you could just attack with him, especially if you top decked or you have like a Lyre Lips on the field and normally you have the Frog Raider. The Frog Raider is your favorite rare guard, so you do need him. So you attack with this column first, which is just 11k, then you attack with him, which is 16. So it's great. They will have to G guard this attack normally, which you want them to, because now you use his GB2 skill to call something from your deck, and if they are at 5 damage, you could just kill them off when you go into a Tiger. If they are like at 4 damage or 3 damage, you could just get Sin Devil Watch for your next turn, or to get the lethal forward to put more pressure on them, or if you play against decks like Angel Feathers, you want also the power, so you go into a Dope. Or if they are at 5 damage or 4 damage and you think that you could get a critical because you haven't seen that much criticals, you could just go into a Mayhem Tiger, because this is just 16 and normally you have some soul to use his skill. If you don't have soul, then I would not recommend going into him. Normally, I would just go into a lethal forward because he gives you a lot of options, especially if your opponent's at like 3 damage or 3 or 4 damage. You can't always get a critical on a drive check of, let's say, twin drive. If you have a triple drive, then you have more percent to get the critical trigger. So it would look like this, and this attack would still be good. So if this hits, you can call more units, which is just let's say you call a Dope If you have face-up damage, you could also call the Axe Diver, which sometimes I have one face-up damage, but I still want to go into him, especially if you have like a Misery. Let's say you have a Misery right here, which is great, because the Misery will be able to call like Stand Trigger, and the Stand Trigger will be able to get the power back, or to get you the counterblast back. Let's go into the second stride turn, which could also be a Supernova. On this turn, as always, you want to have at least the Frog Raider on the field, and you have to fill up your field from your hand. So let's say your field looks like this. So you call one more unit, and that's alright, you could leave it right there, but I recommend you calling something like a Stand Trigger or something behind your Vanguard. The reason for that is when, let's say you have a Liar Lips right here, you could attack with that. If you don't, it's alright. You attack with your Vanguard first. Activate his skill to put one card from your hand into the soul and call something right here, which could be something like a Lethal Forward to put more pressure on your opponent, or something like a Cobalt Impulse. So let's say you go into a second Lethal Forward, then you activate his skill, so he is charged, so let's say you have one charge unit, you activate his skill to make this unit charge, so he still get the extra 3k, you unflip and you put one card from your hand, from your top of your deck into your soul, so you soul charge and counter charge, and then you can make 3 units charge, so 1, 2, 3 could be charged, and you leave the Frog Raider on the field. You don't want to make him charge. That's the reason why you call something behind your Vanguard. Could also be just an Acrobat Verde if you want to. Could be anything. Sometimes just a grade 3, which is just chilling there, and that doesn't even boost, but he could be charged, which is okay. He can't attack from the back row, but he's just chilling. You just want to have at least 4 charging units on the field, which is 1, 2, 3, 4. That will give your Vanguard ability, that will activate your Vanguard ability, will give all your units on the field an extra 10k, so even himself, which would make this attack too much, make their attack very deadly. So after the attack, he goes to the bottom of the deck, which is perfect. He leaves an empty space behind your Vanguard. You do need that. Now you attack with this column first. Why? Because he could restand with every attack. And this attack will go normally for 16, but you call this with your stride skill, so it's 21. He get an extra 3k, so that's 23. The extra 10k from his skill, so that's 33, and the extra 10k from his skill as well, so that's 43. So he attacks for 43, which is, in my opinion, too much. Your opponent would have to guard, so they would just perfect guard this attack, or they would think, okay, we will let this attack go through, because they can't call right here, and we will perfect guard this attack. So they will let this attack go through. And that's the crazy thing about the Axe Diver, which I've said this before, the Axe Diver will give another dimension to the deck, and that dimension is the place behind your Vanguard. You see this card? The the Chrono Jet Dragon, where they normally call him behind their Vanguard because they want to leave the empty space right here. The Axe Diver does the same, but in a better way. Normally, the Chrono Jet will just chill there, it does nothing, they go to your hand at the end of the turn. The Axe Diver will stay right there, activate his skill to bind the Lethal Forward and call it again. The Axe Diver's charge, why not? He will stay on the field anyway. So you make him charge, you Soul Blast and you Counter Blast, and he would restand. He still has the 10k, remember that, and he get an extra 5k from the Axe Diver, so he will get an extra 7k. So you attack with this column again. Why? Because you want to leave this column as last attack, because when you attack with this, you can call something right here. So you attack with this column again, which is 16. You get a 5k from him, so that's 21. 31, 33. So 33 to their Vanguard, and he goes to the bottom of the deck. You attack with this, which is 16, 26, 36, because of their boosts. And then if this attack hits as well, you can call something right here, which could be a Mayhem Tiger to finish the game. But also, if you have a face-up damage, you could go into, let's say, an Hive Maker to get more power, more attacks. So let's say you go into a Hive Maker because you have more charge units in your hand. He restands because he's charged, and they go to the bottom of your deck because both of them were charged. From there, you attack with the Axe Diver again, or the Hive Maker again, and at the end of the battle, he goes to the bottom of your deck, and you can call something from your hand, which could be a dope, could be anything, and he restands again, and you attack. So that's the combo that you do with Supernova, which normally people underestimate him, but he's very, very, very good, especially by having enough cards in your hand and by having the Frog Raider on the field, which is not charged. You get the extra 10k, and remember, if you get a drive check, you also put it right here, which makes all the attacks that I've just counted even more deadly. And so you have seen in my combos, I do use the lethal forward a lot, so that's why I play 3. And the reason why I play 4 tigers is because the tiger is just too good, especially with your Dirty Picaroon turn. You do need the tiger, so you go into the triple tiger combo, as we Spike Roller players like to call it, with Eliza and the Frog Raider. So that's the combo video, guys. Tell me what you think about it. You also see the big value of Lyre Lips, especially on the turn that you can't stride. She's very good. So when you top deck her and you not a grade 3 to stride with, it's alright. Every unit in this deck has a place, so they fit in a team in a way. The only unit that doesn't fit in the team is the Axe Diver at the same time, because he's such an awkward card. He does makes a lot of crazy plays, especially with the lethal forward, which you will come into conclusion that's lethal forward and Axe Diver are just too good together, especially as I said, when you call 2 lethals, like one here and one on the other side, and you have an empty space behind your Vanguard, which is the perfect place for your Axe Diver. So yeah, tell me what you think about the combos. There are way more combos that you could do with Spike Brothers, especially with this deck. So yeah, tell me what you think about the deck from the deck profile if you haven't seen that yet, and tell me what combos that you like to do in this deck. So thanks for watching, guys, and till next time.